Good morning. The first item of business is general questions. Question number 1 from John Lamont.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with Scottish Borders Council about the Council's proposals to withdraw the garden waste collection service.
Cabinet Secretary Richard Lockhead.
The decision to withdraw this service is, of course, a matter for Scottish Borders Council, and there has been therefore no formal discussions between the Council and the Scottish Government on this matter prior to the decision being made. There is, of course, also no statutory duty on councils to provide a household garden waste collection service, although it is a service that many households across Scotland do benefit from.
John Lamont.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that reply. Given that the percentage of household waste being recycled by the Borders Council has already gone down by over 3% in 2012, it shows that progress hasn't just slowed, it is in fact going backwards. Moreover, the Council has itself conceded that this proposal will reduce its recycling rate even further. And taken with a total lack of public consultation which accompanied the move, does it not make a mockery of the Scottish Government's zero waste plan?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, whilst I understand that the recycling figures for Borders Council changed in recent years due to some of the technical reasons behind how they were calculated in the first place, there are, of course, other plans in place which Borders Council will be increasing the recycling rates through the rolling out of food waste collections in the Borders. I understand there's plans to roll out collections to over 20,000 households, and that is a statutory obligation. So I am confident Borders Council and indeed other councils across Scotland are going to increase the recycling rates, and that will be good for the environment and good for local communities.
Christine Graham.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the Cabinet Secretary share my sympathy with authorities such as Scottish Borders Council in this continuing recession, compounded by efforts to ameliorate the bedroom tax of the Tories? However, will the Cabinet Secretary confirm that there may be an opportunity through the Climate Challenge Fund for community councils in my constituency to access funding to set up local recycling projects for green waste? And if he does think so, could I arrange to meet his officials to pursue this matter?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I agree it's a bit rich of Conservative members to not recognise the difficult decisions local government have to take as a response of the Westminster cuts imposed on Scotland. However, I should say that clearly, in terms of the garden waste collection services in the Borders, if there is help that can be made available to social enterprises or small businesses that may be able to take advantage of a gap that's there to be plugged, I would ensure my officials were able to advise the Borders Council and able to meet Christine Graham, MSP, in the first instance to see how these talks could be taken forward.
Question 2, John Pentland.
To ask the Scottish Government when the Cabinet Secretary for Justice last met the Chief Constable and what was discussed.
Cabinet Secretary Ken McAskill.
I last met Sir Stephen House on Tuesday 14th January and I'll be meeting him on Monday coming. Policing in Scotland is performing excellently. Crime is at a 39-year low. Violent crime is down by almost half since 2006-07 and homicides are at their lowest since records began. And the risk of being a victim of crime is falling and confidence in the police is high and rising.
Mr Pentland.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, but could he tell me whether he will play a part in deciding the corporate business strategy and financial savings plan for 2013-2016 in June-March this year, or whether he will be continuing his hands-off approach to the Chief Constable's demolition of Police Scotland?
Well, I think there was two matters there. First of all, I will be meeting with Sir Stephen House and also with Vic Emery to discuss various matters, including the financial challenges that the police face, like every other walk of public and private life in Scotland, with the cuts coming in from Westminster. I do believe, though, that it is right and appropriate, given the legislation that Parliament passed for the single police service, that they are held to account by a Scottish police authority, that we do bear in mind that we should not have routine interference by a Justice Secretary of a political background in what is a public service that is meant to be kept non-political. So I will discuss matters with Sir Stephen House and with Vic Emery, but I do believe that it is important that if Mr Pentland is concerned, they should approach the police authority. Equally, I would have to say it does appear to me, given what I mentioned earlier, that the police service in Scotland is outstanding. That's how it was, that's how it remained, and indeed it is improving, as the records and statistics continue to show.
Question number 3, the late Liam McArthur.
Just-in-time delivery, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it's had with SSE regarding options for reinforcing the electricity grid.
Minister Fergus Ewing.
Reinforcing the electricity grid in Orkney and its subsea links to the mainland is a top priority for the Scottish Government. We engage regularly with SSE on this, both directly and through wider forums. This includes the Intergovernmental Scottish Islands Renewables Project. The Scottish Government, Presiding Officer, remains committed to finding a solution for Orkney and works with all parties to find solutions that can enable the islands to realise their great renewables potential. I will be chairing an Islands Electricity Grid Summit in Stornoway on 24th of February, which SSE and others will attend, including representatives of the UK Government.
McArthur.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank the Minister not just for his answer there, but for the commitment he's shown to this issue over a number of months. You'll be aware that a grid steering group was established to look at the issues, including the issues around the need to reinforce the grid locally. Unfortunately, the announcement in November last year effectively closing off those options has led to a drop in confidence and real concern over the future of a number of projects, including a number of community-owned projects in Orkney. And I therefore ask him if he would be prepared to meet with SSE to discuss how those options of reinforcing the local grid in Orkney might be taken forward from this point.
Minister.
Yes, I will be happy to raise these issues with SSE. I will also be meeting with Councillor James Stockan recently, who, as Liam McArthur will know, has chaired the Orkney Grid Constraints Working Group, whose report was submitted in December last year and which we will be studying carefully. I think members across the whole chamber will want to ensure that the islands achieve their potential in renewables, and I'm very keen to work very closely with Liam McArthur, who has worked very hard on these matters himself.
Jimmy McGregor.
Thank you. Can the Minister confirm if the Scottish Government have plans on how to attract more students into the engineering sector, as the lack of skills have been highlighted as a major concern for the development of smart grids, and that's something that would benefit Orkney greatly?
Minister, I think it's a bit wide of the mark, but if you want to make an attempt, feel free.
I'll have a bash. I mean, I think Jamie McGregor does make a very fair point that in order to achieve the success of renewables projects in the islands and also achieve our potential across the whole spectrum of the massive opportunities in Scotland in renewable energy and oil and gas, we do need to encourage and indeed inspire young people to pursue careers in engineering. There's a huge amount of work being done by the private sector, universities and the Scottish Government to achieve precisely that, and I'm happy to discuss these matters further with Mr McGregor.
Question number 4, Chic Brodie.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what plans it has to boost Scottish exports.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, Scottish exports have performed well in recent years despite difficult global trading conditions. The recent Global Connection survey showed that Scottish international exports, excluding oil and gas, were worth £26 billion in 2012, an increase of £1.4 billion on 2011. Of this, exports of food and drink were worth £4.7 billion. We know that exporters face a difficult global environment, and we're supporting more business to develop the skills to go international. Through Scottish Development International, we provide a range of support to businesses, including smart exporter events and services which have benefited over 4,100 Scottish company delegates since 2010.
Chic Brodie.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. As he said, the outstanding international GCL export figure for Scotland for 2012 of £26 billion declared last week, taken with the SNAP projections for exports to the rest of the UK and for total imports, gives Scotland an onshore trade deficit of £6.3 billion, but when you add in North Sea international exports, there is a trade surplus of £7.5 billion. The UK ONS trade deficit is £33.6 billion. Can the Cabinet Secretary confirm that when it comes to risk in a currency union or even a monetary union with the rest of the UK, the balance of risk does not lie with Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
What I would say, and what the statistics that Mr Brodie raises highlight, is the significant contribution that Scottish trade would make to a currency zone in that context. And as an illustration of the economic strength of Scotland, it demonstrates the very strong platform of internationalisation that the Government has been supporting within the Scottish economy, and we're determined to continue that in the years to come.
Question number 5, Cameron Buchanan.
Thank you. to ask the Scottish Government when it last met representatives of Police Scotland and what issues were discussed.
Cabinet Secretary Ken McCaskill.
I last met representatives of Police Scotland in Inverness on 30th January to discuss how communities in the Highlands are benefiting from the single service. As I said earlier, policing in Scotland is not just performing excellently, but in stark contrast to England and Wales, we are protecting police numbers and have more than 1,000 extra police officers compared to 2007.
Cameron Buchanan.
Thank you. The decision taken by Edinburgh Council this week to suspend its licensing regime for saunas has involved work with partner agencies to ensure that the safety of those who are working there and a number of court actions against the Council. Would the Cabinet Secretary not agree that it would have been far better for this decision to have been taken in good time and with discussions involving all those affected, that this decision represents an example of the single police force imposing a Strathclyde approach to policing and totally ignoring local police priorities?
Cabinet Secretary.
Don't accept that at all. I was at a meeting recently with Councillor Gavin Barry and other councillors who sit upon the relevant board at the City of Edinburgh Council. They had been, quite correctly, in discussions with both Police Scotland and indeed with the local commander, Mark Williams. I fully understand the decision taken. I think it's appropriate by the City of Edinburgh Council, and equally Police Scotland will continue to enforce the law and indeed, as has always been their case with regard to prostitution, put at the very heart the protection of those who are vulnerable. That is and has always been the situation, whether it was in Strathclyde, whether it was in Lothian Borders and whether it's in Police Scotland.
Question number 6, Bill Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what economic growth opportunities the canal network passing through Glasgow Anniesland offers local communities.
Minister Keith Brown.
Scottish Canals have identified a number of locations along the Forth and Clyde Canal where investment can create economic opportunities for the wider canal network. Creating destinations in Bowling to the west and Port Dundas in the city centre will help to stimulate a critical mass of activity whose benefits are expected to be felt along the entire length of the canal from Anniesland and Maryhill to Clydebank and beyond.
Bill Kidd.
I thank the Minister for his reply. I was wondering if he may be able to expand a little on the plans to work with the Scottish Waterways Trust and any other partner organisations in order to develop the recreational and commercial possibilities which could produce job opportunities on the Forth and Clyde Canal as it passes through Glasgow Anniesland at considerable length.
Minister.
Scottish Waterways Trust are somebody with whom Scottish Canals work on a regular basis, obviously a charitable organisation related to Scottish Canals, and there's a great deal of work which is undertaken in the light of the views of Scottish Waterways Trust. But in addition to that, as I've mentioned before, the work which has created all the regeneration activity, including most recently the paddle sports centre in Glasgow, has been done with other partners such as Glasgow City Council and Diageo, and is really leading to a situation where this very underexploited asset, our canals in Scotland, are having fresh life breathed into them and, of course, into the communities which are adjacent to them.
Tricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And of course, as the Minister indicated, the Forth and Clyde Canal plays a significant part in the economic regeneration of my own constituency of Maryhill and Springburn. And I'm very grateful to the Minister for Local Government for agreeing that the projects in my area should be included in NPF 3 going forward. I think that is a major boost. But I wonder if the Minister agrees with me that the opportunities that are available along the Forth and Clyde Canal, including particularly the redevelopment of the Diageo site, would play a major economic factor in the area going forward for at least the next 10 years, and that this is a project that's well worth the commitment and the ambition of the partners involved.
Minister.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all, and that's why, for example, when we've had recent consequentials money or any opportunity to help fund shovel-ready projects, that Scottish Canals have been at the forefront of that. Both, as the member rightly says, in Glasgow, I mentioned the paddle sports centre at Pinxton that's already been created, but also the work that's been done on the canal itself, encouraging people to live on the canal, which has not been the case for many years to come, but also right across Scotland, in the Forth Valley as well, and in the north of Scotland. So, as I say, I think these are real opportunities. We'll continue to look and support those opportunities which arise in Glasgow, which Patricia Ferguson has mentioned, working with Diageo, and to see how we can help the wider regeneration of that area too.
Question number 7, Jim Hume.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to safeguard access to justice in communities in South Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary Ken McCaskill.
The Legal Services Scotland Act 2010 gave the Scottish Legal Aid Board the new function of monitoring the availability and accessibility of legal services in Scotland with reference to relevant factors relating to urban and rural areas. Ministers will be guided by the Board in relation to access to justice in communities in South Scotland, but responsibility for Scotland's courts is a matter for the judicially led and independent Scottish Court Service and not the Scottish Government. As part of their long-term vision for the court estate, the Scottish Court Service has outlined to the Justice Committee that they intend to consider the possibility of integrated justice centres in 4 areas. The first of these feasibility studies is underway in the Borders, and SCS and Scottish Borders Council are jointly undertaking the study along with other justice partners.
Jim Hume.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response. I met with members of that very feasibility study group yesterday, and they, as you say, are looking into the future of court services in the Borders. They confirmed that closing Duns and Peebles courts presents major problems of access to justice for witnesses and victims of crimes in the Scottish Borders. Will the Cabinet Secretary concede that Scottish ministers have effectively created a situation whereby access to justice will be fundamentally impaired precisely by their move to close Duns and Peebles courts, and will he further agree that the future of Selkirk and Jedburgh courts now hangs in the balance because of that?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I welcome the ongoing discussion between the Scottish Court Service and Scottish Borders Council. It appears to me that they are seeking to reach a workable solution to ensure that as changes take place demographically, topographically, with a whole variety of matters there, that the best possible solution for the Borders is taken into. No proposals have been put to us beyond what has been discussed with the Justice Committee, and these matters remain with the Scottish Court Service, and I would encourage the member to continue that dialogue, both with the Council and with the Court Service.
Question number 8, Claire Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what progress it is making in tackling unemployment.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, the economic recovery gained momentum during 2013, and we've seen 18 months of continuous growth in Scotland. Alongside this, we've seen improvements in the labour market, with employment rising by 90,000 over the year to September to November 2013. At 72.7%, the employment rate in Scotland for the same period remains above the UK rate of 72.1%.
Claire Adamson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response and acknowledge the encouraging figures in the latest employment statistics. But does the Cabinet Secretary agree that with an independent Scotland we would have control to implement measures that could further strengthen youth unemployment, such as the European Union's Youth Guarantee?
Cabinet Secretary.
The European Youth Guarantee is a particularly beneficial measure to try to support and enable young people to fulfil their economic potential. It is an issue which has been pursued vigorously by the Minister for Youth Employment, Angela Constance, in various different ways, and specifically and directly with the United Kingdom Government. I think it would have been much more helpful to young people in Scotland if the United Kingdom Government had given a positive response to the European Youth Guarantee, and certainly I can assure Claire Adamson that the Government of an Independent Scotland would have the flexibility and the opportunity to give renewed support and impetus to the European Youth Guarantee and to improve the employment prospects of young people in our country.
Question number 9, David Torrance.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to increase the number of foster families.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Ross.
Presiding Officer, we should of course show great appreciation for all our foster carers. The Scottish Government has provided over £1 million to the fostering network, partly to enable them to raise awareness about fostering through their annual campaign. Many local authorities run campaigns at the same time. They have been very successful in reducing the shortage of fostering households. The gap, which was 1,700 in 2011, is now 850. No one can be complacent. Last year, the Scottish Government ran a fostering recruitment retention seminar in support of Foster Care Fortnight and established a forum to share experiences, and we recently announced our response to the Foster Care Review.
Briefly, Mr Torrance.
I thank Cabinet Secretary for his answer. According to Foster Network, at least 850 foster families are needed in Scotland. Fife has a target of 60 new foster care placements to be approved by September 2015. What additional support measures is the Government considering to ensure each and every child can be provided with a suitable family?
Briefly, Mr.
I've indicated to the member that the number is coming down, but more can be done. The funding we provide to the fostering network helps to support local recruitment. The foster care review does so. I'd be happy to make sure that the member meets Aileen Campbell, the Minister, to discuss further what can be done in his own area.
Thank you. We now move to First Minister's questions. Question number 1, Joanne Lamont.